Wow.
So,
Hello. Welcome.
Good evening.
hello.
Oh, hello, Smiley. You're first again. Yeah, good evening, everyone. We are going to talk about the Russia and Ukraine situation, and we're very, very lucky to have somebody join us tonight who's been there and done this all before. His name is Seb. We're not going to give out his surname for obvious reasons. And he's a former journalist for the BBC World Service. He was a war correspondent while the Bosnian War was going on, and he now is a freelance political analyst. And I think you're going to find what he has to say is very interesting. We just had a long chat, and it's very interesting. So I'm going to hand over to Whisky because she does understand his language a bit better than me.
No, I don't. I don't speak his. I don't speak his mother tongue at all.
Well, I believe moment of the political.
Yeah, that kind of a lingo. Yeah, I mean, Seb and I have been friends for
since the Brexit referendum, or just about the year.
just about the
so
year.
About 7 years.
Yeah, about 7 years. And you know, I've always said on my channel that I love being in the company of people of intelligent, higher intelligence than me, who can broaden my mindset. And meeting Seb was just brilliant because I'm comfortable asking the dumb questions, and he's comfortable dumbing down the facts to my level so I understand it. Because my knowledge of European political history is absolutely zero. So yeah, we've become good pals, haven't we?
We have, yes. I'm not sure I have any higher intelligence. I just have a differently focused intelligence, but not necessarily higher or lower.
Okay.
I wouldn't know what to do with your dogs
well,
for a second.
That's true. Thank you for bringing up my honours degree, Bachelor of Science in Canine Psychology, even though it's totally unrelated in this subject.
Precisely. I got bitten by dogs twice in my life, so I obviously know nothing about canine psychology.
So with regard to the Ukraine crisis, it was sheer fluke that you happened to be visiting here.
Yes.
When it all went down, and I said, "Bloody hell, you got out of Europe just in time, mate."
Just in time, yes.
He's hunkering down here for the foreseeable, and
until we find out whether Putin will stop in Ukraine, or can I go back to Eastern Europe?
So I would like you to explain to everybody the backstory to this. How did we get from the situation in 2012, 2013?
2014 was the crucial year. 2014 was the crucial year in the modern history of Ukraine. That was the year when the Viktor Yanukovych was the president of Ukraine. We can say far more closely associated and respectful of the views of Russia than the administration that succeeded it. He was removed from power in what was really a coup. It was called the Orange Revolution, or massive. There were massive demonstrations in the streets of Kiev, of Maidan, by the pro-Western or pro-EU demonstrators wishing for more independence for Ukraine from Russia, for the closer links with the European Union first and foremost. There were a lot of European Union flags flying in Kiev on those days. and eventually the Viktor Yanukovych regime collapsed. Although I have to also stress that Viktor Yanukovych was also a democratically elected leader. I mean, the Ukraine reinstated democratic system of governance back in 1991, immediately following the collapse of the Soviet Union. But most of the governments and administrations between 1991 and 2014 were more or less, pro-Russian or Russian-leaning, or trying to continue special relationship which existed between Russia and Ukraine during the Soviet times. What changed in 2014? Probably there was a lot of money coming in from the European Union, supporting the various non-governmental organizations, opposition parties. I also believe some of the local oligarchs have found that they had more economic interest to align themselves with the European Union. They would find a more attractive deals to make with the European Union, which was on the way of the expansion and looking to incorporate Ukraine into its membership at that time. This was like maybe some time before the Brexit and before the European Union went into a political crisis of its own caused by the Brexit. So this was like the promising times for the European Union. The Obama administration was in power in Washington, which was again, very supportive of what we now call the globalist agenda. The revolution in Ukraine came at the back end of a series of regime changes in North Africa, with Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, even the war in Syria began also at about the same time. So that was the background to what caused the first seismic shift in the national politics of Ukraine at the time. The net result of the revolution of 2014, or the Maidan revolution, as they call it, according to the name of the central square in Kiev, where all the government institutions are centered, was that Russia went in and annexed the Crimea, which was only gifted or given to Ukraine in 1954. So it wasn't actually part of the Ukrainian territory for a very long time. The Western allies at the time possibly decided that they don't want to get into too much trouble with Russia over Crimea. They had also hoped that perhaps the government in Moscow, the President Putin and the others, would be happy for after annexing Crimea, that if that was their main objective, they would not wish to stoke any further troubles for the new pro-Western government in Kiev. The two eastern provinces of Ukraine, the Donetsk and Lugansk, were initially populated by ethnic Russians in a great majority, 70% in Donetsk, even more, 78 or 79% in Lugansk. These are also the main mining areas of Ukraine. So of all the Ukrainian exports at the time, the Lugansk and Donetsk regions were earning a lot of foreign income, basically by mining various coals and minerals in this minerally rich part of the Ukraine. They've declared their autonomy from Ukraine, the independence which was not recognized by Russia. There were shootings. Some people were killed at the time as well. Viktor Yanukovych, the deposed president, fled to Russia and was given sanctuary by Vladimir Putin and his authorities. And basically, the whole of the saga, which lasted for maybe up to 3 or 4 months, if you count the time it took Russia to annex and incorporate Crimea into the Russia proper. The acrimony at the time was ended by peace negotiations in the Belarusian capital of Minsk, And there was something called the Minsk Accords or the Minsk Treaty, which was signed by Russia, Ukraine, and witnessed by the European Union, NATO, and United States. That brought an end to the fighting in Ukraine. And however, none of the issues or none of the measures that are contained in the Minsk, or to put it differently, most of the measures that were envisaged to be taken by both sides in the Minsk agreements never took place. Ukrainian side was supposed to change its constitution to recognize political autonomy of Donetsk and Lugansk. They're also supposed to be given the right of veto on some decisions made by the government in Kiev in regard of the foreign policy and security policy. So basically, they needed to change the constitution and to redesign the structure of the Ukrainian government from being a centrally run unitary government to the federal structure, which would sort of recognize the main Ukrainian state as well as provinces of Donetsk and Lugansk with their special rights. That never happened. Also, Russian side has also taken some tasks which basically they were supposed to stop, establish the customs points and secure the border between the secessionist regions of Ukraine and bordering and international and secure the international border, prevent illegal traffic between Russia and those provinces. That was also something that was never done on either side. Minsk Accords also were putting duty on the European Union to keep on mediating between the sides following the end of the hostilities in 2014. The European Union didn't do very much at all in those past 8 years, mainly for the reasons that with the previously 28, following the Brexit, 27 member countries had their own national interests were very often conflicted and varied in response to both in relations to both political relations with Ukraine and political relations with Russia. Germany and Italy were dependent on Russian gas exports. Hungary had political links with Russia, which were very close, and also strong economic links with huge ownership of Russian capital in the Hungarian energy sector. Then we had all the Eastern Orthodox Christian countries of the Southeastern Europe, namely Greece, Cyprus, Bulgaria, even Romania to some extent, which have a particular and spiritual, maybe I should call it, or religious link to the Russia as being the central pivotal nation of the Eastern Orthodox Christianity. So their population and their own churches would not permit those governments to be hostile to Russia or to approve any decisions on the European level which would be hostile to Russia. So basically, on European Union was on so many levels paralyzed and prevented from forming a single policy with which they could come to either Ukraine or Russia or to both of them together and said, "Look, guys, these are our joint proposals. This is what we would like you to do." So this was never done. European Union simply abandoned its duty, and now we have a situation where since the last summer, or May or June, the first intelligence reports that that were being released in the Western media were suggesting that Russia was building up the armed forces on the Ukrainian border. That happened in May or June. That process kept on being increased and monitored by the Western sides. And at some point, it became obvious that Russia would intervene. I personally did not believe it would happen. I didn't see logical reasons for it to happen because Russia had also had many other, less offensive and perhaps maybe not, maybe even less illegal ways in relation to international law to intervene in Ukrainian politics. With so many of ethnic Russians living within the Ukraine, they could have, as they did in 2014, they could have caused trouble for the Ukrainian government if they wanted to cause trouble with the Ukrainian government without actually using the forces and crossing the borders and going on for full-scale war and invasion into an independent sovereign state of Ukraine. So this was that's basically how it all happened. We can argue and discuss forever, like the motivations. Is Vladimir Putin still a sane person? Did he fell into a trap which was laid for him by the ever expanding NATO or the globalist circles? History will give answers to these questions, but possibly not anytime soon.
So it's fair to say that when you landed here, one of the first things I asked you about was what is going on. Are we really going to go to war with Russia? And you felt that he wasn't going to go this far, didn't you, initially?
I personally did not believe it would happen. Also, I mean, I was in Bulgaria just before I was in the port city of Varna on the Black Sea, and I traveled to the UK on the 16th of June, which was, I believe, Tuesday or Wednesday, not even sure anymore. But the previous weekend, on Saturday morning, I heard military jets overflying the town, which is not something you normally, which is not the sound you normally hear in the city of Varna, which is like this kind of like most luxurious, elegant Bulgarian resort on the Black Sea coast. It was kind of like a bit sobering to hear those. There are probably military exercises by NATO forces, which increased their presence all along the eastern flank of the NATO. So in countries such as Romania and Bulgaria as well. And the boys were simply doing their regular weekend exercise, but that sort of put the fear into our hearts. It was like this like the roaring noise of military jets overflying. It reminded me of the beginning of the war of Yugoslavia. There was also, I remember early morning, maybe it was like August 1991 when I was in Zagreb in Croatia, still a student at the time, and I heard. And that was like the first time when we heard the military jets overflying the town, and that was kind of the almost an announcement of the kind of things to come. So that experience of 2 weekends ago in Varna in Bulgaria, when again, out of the blue we heard this like series of military jets, breaking the sound barrier, doing all kind of noise. That kind of suggested that something big is about to happen. And then another thing, it was almost impossible to get a flight to London. I mean, it was just sort of like all the flights were being booked, all the people, from all of this area. Bulgaria is not even close to Ukraine, but people were, many people were leaving. Yeah, and my flight from Sofia to London was full, and it was kind of like there was very much almost a Saigon type of feeling. Yeah, we are leaving something behind. We don't know whether we will come back, and what the region will look like when we do come back, if we do come back.
So when he did start invading, for want of a better word, at the beginning, all of the discussion was about those two. What would you call them? Districts that are
from the point of the
Russians.
From the point of the Ukrainian constitutions, there would be the provinces. The Russians are now calling them republics, which is they've recognized them as independent states and the republics. That's of course for the time being. It's
and these are people who are Russian, identify as Russian, and want to be part of Russia in those provinces.
Definitely, I wouldn't go as far to say that they want to be a part of Russia. I mean, there hasn't been a referendum, or
right.
I mean, people in Crimea in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, they did have a referendum. This act of the recognition of their independence, not yet incorporation into Russia, was simply done by the decision of Vladimir Putin himself, without any sort of act of democratic legitimacy. So we haven't had a referendum, we haven't had elections or assemblies or parliaments in those provinces that would ask Russia to do anything like that. I think there were some messages from the leaders of these two provinces calling for Russia to recognize that independence, but there was no act where the population of those regions would actually vote and elect to go either way. But I would say that for most before 2014, I think the ratio between the ethnic Russians and ethnic Ukrainians stood at about 70 to 30% in favor of Russians, a little bit more in Lugansk, a little bit less in Donetsk, but that was sort of since 2014, most Ukrainians have left those two provinces, and I would dare to say that they are now exclusively Russian populated. The Russian government, the Russian authorities, the Russian state sources, the Vladimir Putin regime, they are pointing out that although, despite of having reached the Minsk agreement in 2014, the people and the population along the contact lines between Ukraine proper, or the parts of the Ukraine governed by the government in Kiev and the rebel provinces, there was never peace. That they kept on that the Ukrainian military and the police forces kept on shelling these areas, kept attacking those people. Vladimir Putin has used the word genocide, accusing the Ukrainian authorities of having been complicit in genocide, which was ongoing for 8 years, and also accusing Western media of not covering that sort of genocide. I believe that there may have been an incident. Calling them genocide, I would choose rather not to use such a terminology. But that's Russia's choice and Russia's arguments for going into war. So they say that for the past 8 years, Ukraine has been continually committing genocide against the people of Donetsk and Lugansk. That's there are no. I mean, the Western media. I think it is the fact that Western media perhaps were not interested as much in covering the eastern Ukraine, region. They were perhaps deemed it as a local Ukrainian issue, but calling it a genocide is a bit strong word, at least to say.
Normally, when somebody says there's been a genocide, you see the footage, you see the evidence that something horrific's happened.
Well, one of the definitions of genocide is actually is one of the legal definitions of genocide is taking up the measures with the view of expelling civilian population from a certain area based on their ethnicity or religion or whatever whatever identity, the common identity they may enjoy. This is so this is what Russia is that is the definition that Russia is trying to apply to the situation by saying by continuously shelling, by making it impossible for the people in Donetsk and Lugansk to live normal lives for over 8 years. Ukraine is effectively guilty of genocide. Very strong word. I think in Bosnia we had 80,000 people killed in a single day, and we had like a number of court proceedings at two different judicial institutions in Hague, the International Tribunal for former Yugoslavia, and also International Court of Justice, which were arguing for about 5 or 6 years whether the incident in Srebrenica was genocide or not. I think using the word genocide itself is manipulation, and should not really be done unless you have a very convincing reasons that a certain action amounts to the qualification of genocide. Not to mention the Second World War and the Holocaust and what happened to the Jewish population of Europe. It's just whatever happened in Donetsk, in Lugansk, in the past 8 years. There might have been rivalries. Ukraine was certainly not happy that those two provinces are sort of halfway out of their country and on the way to secession. Using the word genocide is just some.
When they used the word genocide in the Bosnian conflict, there was the mass graves. There was tangible evidence.
8,000
stuff had happened.
8,000 men, and who were killed with the sole purpose to prevent an ethnic community from procreation.
Yeah.
And that is genocide. Donetsk and Lugansk, I don't see it as a genocide. I believe it's very unhelpful for the quality of international relations to kind of cheapen the such a tragic term, which should really be reserved for the most heinous war crimes and not just for any conflict. And
so where we're at now, we've obviously all been watching the news and reading the newspapers. We're seeing footage of military air bases that have been shelled. Has he stuck strategically to particular military sites around the Ukraine nation?
Well, he has taken out most of the radar control and most of the anti-air installations, sort of aerial protection facilities, and the radar stations. The Russia has also taken control of all airports encircling the city of Kiev, and there are quite a lot of them. There are 3 civilian airports and 4 militaries, I think, if I'm corrected. And there is also the Antonov airport, which is normally used for those huge Ukrainian cargo planes that are encircling the world of the city. So all these airports have, according to the last news, have now fallen into the Russian are under Russian control, and the Russian military is now using them to bring in these big transport helicopters with additional soldiers and flying them directly on the outskirts of Kiev. I fear what will be the future for the Kiev itself, because if Russia is intent on taking control of Kiev, having seen what happened in Sarajevo in 1990s when a similar capital city of a nation was encircled from all sides by hostile forces, and how it played out on the citizens of Sarajevo, I would very much be fearful for the immediate future. It could turn into a very nasty street-to-street battle if I cannot see the logic of it, but because the goal of us, Vladimir Putin has stated that the goal of the special military operation is denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine. Translated to common English or day-to-day or any language, really means a surrender of all Ukraine. Denazification, demilitarization, it means you have to give up your military capabilities, all of them. And denazification presumably means that a lot of politicians would be seen as being Nazi and would therefore be needed to be cleared out of the national politics. So those things cannot be done unless you have full control of the country, unless the country has capitulated and has surrendered itself to the invading force.
And he's made that quite clear now, hasn't he? That he's not going to stop unless they surrender.
He didn't yesterday. Yesterday, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, he asked for the ceasefire and for the negotiations, and the response from Moscow: yes, we will talk. We would like to talk. We would like to send a delegation to meet you, on the condition that there is a demilitarization of the country before such talks can start. So basically, it's a no. It's by putting up unreasonable conditions, conditions that one side knows that the other side cannot accept for not even political but purely existential reasons. Then obviously that's not a positive answer. It's a negative answer. It's like it's a rejection of the talks and not acceptance of talks.
So earlier in the week, it was reported that there was Russian troops had arrived at Chernobyl, at the site of Chernobyl.
Yes, and there was a footage shown by both Western and Russians news channels showing Ukrainian and Russian soldiers jointly safeguarding the Chernobyl plant. So on that particular front, it seems that
they all agree that damaging Chernobyl's sarcophagus.
It seems, but only the Russian soldiers are carrying the arms. So it seems that the conditions of Russians that if that the Ukrainian soldiers only should surrender their arms was done actually at Chernobyl, possibly to safeguard the plant itself. So that it seems that like there was no opposition from the Ukrainian forces guarding the Chernobyl, and as a result, we now have Russians and Ukrainian forces jointly safeguarding Chernobyl. But on the video footage that I have seen, I've noticed that only the Russian soldiers are carrying the arms, whereby the Ukrainian soldiers are in their Ukrainian uniforms, working together, talking together, but the Ukrainian soldiers clearly do not have any arms on them, whereby the Russian soldiers have everything. Knives, guns, machine guns, whatever you can think, on every one of them.
But it's mutually agreed no one's going to damage that sarcophagus.
Yeah, it looks like that.
Well, that's a relief, isn't it? Because I know a lot of people were scared that he was planning to do something.
Yeah.
So now, as of tonight, where are we at? Have things moved forward? The last I saw, and I know Seb's been watching every news channel in every language he can find, and he's like, sorry, do you want your television back? And I'm like, no, just translate and update me when you're done. But at tea time on Sky News, it was the sun had just gone down in Kiev, and the correspondent said, well, I'm just going to go and put some protective armor on now because I can hear explosions in the distance. Is that going to be something that's going to be seen right across Ukraine, or are they focusing on Kiev?
I believe the building on the speech that Vladimir Putin did on the day before the invasion began, which was an hour-long speech, which led some Western leaders to question his sanity, as he was talking about. It was a history-loaded speech, sort of, questioning whether the Ukrainian nation should even have a right to a statehood or to have an entity which is in political terms separated from Russia. I believe the command or his priority is to take the capital Kiev, possibly with a view to install a government or at least a leader which would be basically a Russian friendly one,
right?
And which would promise, whom Russians would trust never to take Ukraine into NATO membership or even the membership of the European Union. This is what they don't want. This is what Russia sort of doesn't want to happen. I think Putin is now, or Russia, I should say, to be correct. I mean, I do not wish to. I personally think that the support for the operation is really much wider than Putin regime only. I do believe that great majority of Russians, for various reasons, would support a country in these circumstances that would line up with their leadership. So unless there is a clear rebellion within the structures of the Russian government that would sort of move more publicly against Putin or his isolate certain closest leaders to him. I would say it's whole of Russia. It's not just the Putin. So I believe that their priority is to take down the Kiev. But I think they're in trouble now because that they're probably expecting less problems in taking control of the airports. They were probably hoping to complete this first stage within the first 1 or 2 or 3 days. The longer it takes, the longer the Ukrainian defenders are managing to hamper the Russian efforts to take the capital city, the more time the global opposition to the Russian action, the global political opposition,
Yes.
whether in the United Nations or elsewhere, they can harden the pressure on Russia, put harder sanctions in place, and bring even more arms for the Ukrainian defenders. So the time is not working for Russia at the moment, and I think that it's taken too long. They're not even close to taking central Kiev. I mean, they have possibly encircled the city.
Yeah.
They have taken the control of the airports, but to actually depose the government, you really need to come to the Maidan Square and take down the Ukrainian flag from the parliament and replace it with Russian flag. And then once you've done that, you can say that you have control of the town. This is not going to happen tonight. I think Ukrainians have potential to fight, and it may drag on. And this may be right at the outset of this intervention. This may also be proven to be Russia's.
What's your take on what our Prime Minister has done? Do you think he's done everything correctly? Is there anything he could have done better? Or
from the point of the Ukrainians, yes, he could have sent troops to fight with Ukrainians against Russians. Of course, that was unrealistic. Ukrainian President Zelensky was told in very clear terms by everybody in the West that this would not happen. That if the war starts, yes, you will get money. Yes, you will get a lot of arms, but the NATO soldiers would not cross into Ukraine to defend Ukraine from Russia because Ukraine is not a NATO member. Decisions that Zelensky has made were almost ignorant of this advice. I mean, was he pushed into war? Was somebody else, pulling the strings from some conspiratorial dark background? We'll never know, and I don't think we need to think about it. But as what is known is that Zelensky has pushed on for he didn't have much choice. It was the Russians who crossed into the Ukrainian territory, but perhaps Zelensky could have made more conciliatory moves before it happened, in the weeks before it happened. However, he didn't. He took a very hard stance in protection of Ukrainian sovereignty, territorial integrity. He wouldn't enter into any discussions that would put him in conflict with the Ukrainian constitution, and basically every single Russian demand runs contrary to the national constitution. So he was not in position. He did not want to talk to Russians at all. So he kind of there it was. Then the invasion started, and about 2 days later he realized that he was alone.
Right. So as things stand, it's not the intention of any NATO country to put boots on the ground in Ukraine, just to provide equipment and weaponry,
and to put pressure on Russia, to put as the
sanctions
and what people in Washington and London like to call to put the cost on Russia, which is, I mean, a cost is a cost. And the gun and the tank is a gun and a tank, and it's like it's not. Well, it's kind of I mean, putting cost on something is not killing anybody, and whereby a tank and a gun, they are sort of destroying
And
Uh,
as of today, Germany agreed to start sending some equipment and
more than
weapons.
helmets, yes.
Yeah.
Up to yesterday, they were only delivering helmets,
Right.
which is.
So helmets is not very. What they're going to do? Fling them at them? You know? So now Germany has joined in as well. With
But
sending-
Germany, at the same time, Germany is the most vocal member of the European Union who is preventing this the exclusion of Russia from the international payment system, the SWIFT system, which for very much its own economical reasons. They are the biggest importer of the Russian gas. Their industry is very much dependent on the Russian gas, and if Russia is excluded from the international SWIFT payment systems, Germany would not be able to pay for the gas deliveries. The Russians would probably not be delivering gas in that case, and that would be the problem. There might be some negotiations. Germany perhaps negotiating better price for the LNG of the deliveries of the liquefied gas from either Qatar or the United States, which is not.
That's very expensive if they're shipping it.
Under normal market conditions, it's more expensive than the Russian gas.
Yeah.
So maybe so. But then if Germany may argue that it's being pushed by Washington, they may then in return demand that America gives them preferential rates, which will not happen because it's not in the nature of the states to do.
Well, Joe Biden has said he's going to look after his people and try and keep the cost for fuel for them down. So he's not going to sacrifice that promise to make life.
Germany will have that cost that cost itself. Yeah. But I think that leads us to another question. I mean, both Boris Johnson and the European leaders, beginning with President of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, they were stressing over the last 2 or 3 days that how important it is to have a united Western stance towards Russia. Mm-hmm. But the interest of the various Western countries are really not that same. The interests of the remaining 27 members of the European Union are not the same as are the interests of the United Kingdom or the United States. There are some very, very clear differences. I'm not sure if your audience would like me to state them. I don't think that but some of the continental Europe is far more dependent on imports of the Russian energy. I would even say that they are sort of intellectually, perhaps even closer to the idea of unelected bureaucracies. the idea of the centralized control, which was one of the reasons why the United Kingdom left the European Union in the same place. Yeah. So we got some frighteningly frightening similarities in the very way that both the European Union and the Russian states or systems are organized, are set up. Whereby obviously the United Kingdom and the United States are countries of the Anglo-Saxon capitalism, different economical models, and different global interests.
So, to be clear, he's only sent all of his might down in and around the borders of Ukraine. He's not putting his army NATO countries.
And unless he's
the reason I'm saying that is because there are some people who are fear mongering and think we're hurtling towards World War III and nuclear war and God knows what else.
Well, let's go back 30 years and the beginning of the war in former Yugoslavia. The first clashes began in Slovenia. They lasted only for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, the situation sort of normalized itself. The Yugoslav army withdrew itself from Slovenia, and all seemed, European Union sent 3 foreign ministers, Italian, Luxembourg, and French, I think, as a negotiating mission, to negotiate between Slovenia and Belgrade, and how to. And basically, Slovenia was allowed to go, and everybody thought, this was the end of it. It was like a war that lasted for 2 weeks. Uh, it ended with de facto Slovenian victory, and they declared their independence, and they left Yugoslavia, and everything seemed to be okay. And then 2 or 3 months later, Croatia erupted, and then a year later, Bosnia erupted, and then 5 years later, Kosovo erupted. So once you breach this sacred line between peace and war, anything may happen. However, I do not. No one reasonably expects that Russia, as a nuclear power, would wish to fight with another nuclear power organization, such as other member states of the NATO alliance,
Yeah.
because NATO is also a nuclear power, nuclear organization. They have nuclear arms at their disposal. There was a Cold War in Europe between 1945 and 1990. For 45 years, we had a communist bloc, facing off the Western blocs. Things have never got this bad between those two blocs. There was a mutual respect between the adversaries. I think the closest we had to the Armageddon at that time was the Cuban crisis in 1961. That was stopped and prevented by the negotiations between Kennedy and Khrushchev in the last minute. And there was, however, this is different. I mean, if Russia was to expand the hostilities to another countries, I would very much fear what would happen to countries like Finland and Sweden, who are not members of the NATO,
Yeah.
and who are in a way in a similar position as Ukraine, although much more powerful than Ukraine. Sweden also produces its own air force. They manufacture their own military hardware, so there wouldn't be an easy thing to do for Russia.
Yeah.
However, that's very unlikely to happen. That they would attack any NATO member, which, according to the Article 5 of the NATO alliance, an attack on one NATO member is an attack on them all, and that is like what follows is the immediate declaration of war by all 29, 30 members of NATO. I'm not sure how many there are at the moment. Yeah?
So also people are talking about the risk that China is supporting Russia in this, and that we're up against two
I am going
huge
to be
powers.
I'm going to be a little bit conspiratorial now.
Yeah.
I'm
Is
going
it
to
time to put our tinfoil hats on?
Yeah, I'm going. Basically, yes, China also has territorial ambitions in the South China Sea, but on the one hand, the harder the Western sanctions are against Russia, the cheaper is the price of the Russian oil offered to the Chinese market. So that is one sort of constant. So on the other hand, if the Western countries or the Western NATO, United States, whatever we made it, or whatever anyone may sort of include in the definition of the political and the military West, if they are really determined to completely defeat Putin regime,
Yeah.
well, then at some point somebody will make an offer to China. What do you want, and how much do you want, or how
What will it take to make this go away?
To remove that.
Yeah.
And I think what happened is that the Security Council of the United Nations, I think that China did send a signal that it is that their doors are open for business, because although the expectation was by most political analysts that they would vote with Russia against the Security Council resolution deploring Russian actions, they did not vote with Russia. They simply abstained, which basically,
That sounds like they said we want no part of this. If they abstain, they're neither for nor against.
Well, I think again, sort of I, bel I don't believe anybody uh, in the West really fully understands the inner workings of the Chinese government and the Chinese state. However, my impression, my gut feeling impression was that they said, okay, we are here and we are open for business. Who offers what? If Russia comes up with the right offer, next time we vote for you. If the West comes with the right offer, then we'll put our own sanctions on the Russian border with China. In which case, Russia would be
then you're surrounded, isn't
in a
it?
very serious trouble.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Okay. Right. Well, I've asked lots and lots of questions. I'm sure there's been a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to leave it all over to you now. And
okay.
you, Mo.
How do I find the questions?
Well, we're hoping that Mo will have
Uh-huh.
made a note and let us know who,
Okay.
or people in the chat will ask questions
Uh-huh.
here.
I have a question from our Molly actually, and she wants to know what effects on Romania will this have, because she does have a vested interest.
Romania.
Mm.
Romania is a member of the NATO alliance. Romania does have some interest. It very much depends how will the Russian intervention play out in the end. And there is one school of thought that suspects Russian forces in the south of the Ukraine would try to link up with the Transnistria region, which is the region of Moldova, which is the independent state. Uh, 70 or 80 years ago, it used to be known as Bessarabia, which was the Romanian province. At the end of the Second World War, the Red Army and Stalin at the time took that region away from Romania and incorporated it into the Moldovan Socialist Republic, which became part of the Soviet Union. Following the fallout of the Soviet Union, in the 1990, Moldova became an independent country. The country is divided pretty much half line, and it's already the population of Moldova has pretty much already separated it among themselves. The eastern parts of the country have effectively broken away from Moldova proper. They are calling themselves Transnistria, and this is the Russian populated areas of Moldova, whereby the rest of Moldova, the regions belonging to the Romania proper, are populated by ethnic Romanians. So I think Romania at the moment is very loyal member of the NATO alliance and of the European Union. I don't think they would do anything on their own that would sort of contravene whatever decisions are made at the higher level, whether the EU level or the NATO level. However, if Russian troops do proceed, and it's a very long shot. At the moment, the Russians are controlling the coast of the Azov Sea, which is the area connecting Crimea with Russia proper. And they have one city along that route, which is called Mariupol, which is still in the Ukrainian control and defended by some of the most celebrated Ukrainian forces, the Azov Battalion. And that city is not in control of the Russians yet, but all the other surrounding area is. And some of the Russian units have been attacking cities on the other side of the Dnieper River towards Odessa. And there's also been one incursion from boats from the sea, from the Russian ships towards in the general direction of Transnistria. But the bulk of the Russian army is nowhere near Transnistria at the moment, and unless they come to the Transnistria, I don't see that Romania will have any interest of their own to break away from whatever political or military decisions are made on the EU or NATO level. However, if the Russians come to Transnistria, and then if the Russians living in Moldova or Transnistria decide to completely break away from the rest of Moldova, with the support of the Russian military, then all bets are off. Why would half of the Moldova even remain an independent state? They could just as well incorporate themselves with Romania. In that case, this could get complicated in a way that would involve Romanian national interests on a higher level, and perhaps motivate some in the Romanian parliament to start, talking about different issues and more take a more patriotic approach that would possibly come in at some point in clash with the European Union. However, it is very unlikely. The current president of Romania is actually comes from the Romanian German minority around the Brasov area. He is a living European. He takes great pride in being a loyal European. The Romanian government is also pro-European, pro-EU, very very much so. It's not. They're not. They're not members of this sort of Eastern European rebel club, which would involve countries like Poland and Hungary and others. Romania is very much a loyal member state of both the EU and the NATO, and unless they are tempted with the very realistic possibility of enlarging their own national territory, following any possible split in Moldova, I don't see them sort of breaking out and doing anything silly.
Also, I wanted to ask, do you feel that the media is reporting this properly? Properly is probably the wrong word. Truthfully, probably.
I don't know. The short answer is no. The short answer is no. The more complex answer is that media, every media outlet, and YouTube is, by the way, doing a very good thing at the moment, because as soon as you click any channel that brings up the rolling news coverage of the events in Ukraine, as of yesterday, I believe the YouTube has been putting notices. The Euronews is partly or in full funded by the EU. The BBC is the British public broadcaster. The IRT is funded by the Russian government. So YouTube is trying to make very more clear to the viewers who stands behind what channel. But even if you didn't have these notices, I think the news agenda that comes from a certain channel very much differs from one another, and there is this case that whatever fighting might be going on in the Donetsk and Lugansk Russian-controlled areas of the eastern Ukraine are typically not reported on Sky News or BBC or any of the Western channels, whereby the RT News will. Whenever they see a rocket flying into an apartment block in Kiev, the RT will be first one to report that it was the Ukrainian-owned rocket and not a Russian one. So, everybody's following their own interests and agenda. In order for us, the ordinary people, ordinary viewers, to get any idea or get closer to the truth, we really need to know the background, the ownership structure, and the interests of the people who are running the certain platform that we are getting the information from. So if it is the BBC, if it is the Sky News, then obviously they would be closer to whatever British national interests are in the sphere of war. If it is Euronews, then they will be the mouthpiece of the European Commission, and if it is the RT, they will give their full due respects to the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and all his ministers, and they will treat them with a huge deal of respect. They will never call them madmen or anything like that.
So I think the lesson there is watch all the news channels, and somewhere in that
it's up to every individual. I mean, people are different. I mean, if I was a father, if my son was in the British Army and under sort of with the possibility of being exposed to the conflict, then I wouldn't have any time for RT. I really wouldn't, really, because I would be concerned with the safety of my soldier son, and I would follow the the news channels that would, whose coverage would complement or will serve my needs the best. I mean, it's up to everybody. I mean, if you have your own strong opinion who is right and who is wrong, then people should align with those television channels that are closest to them. If you want to get anywhere closer to the truth, then yes, you will need to watch all of them.
Yeah.
But nobody has time to watch all of them. That's also
No,
the
that's
problem.
true. There
It's
isn't the
like
time.
you can't
I mean,
really, yeah.
I look at things with a bit of a squinty eye sometimes,
Mm.
because if it doesn't look right, I'll
Yeah.
question it. And
No.
we had that situation.
I mean, most people have
Yeah,
have their jobs to do and works to do, and
yeah,
they don't have more than 30 or 1 hour per
No.
day to take in the news, and within 30 minutes or 1 hour, you really can't serve so many different channels and look for differences, and
Mhm.
and it just takes a lot of time.
There you go. She's gone. She's left
She's gone.
us.
Okay.
Have you
Any
muted
question?
yourself, Mo?
No, I haven't.
Never done that before. I was just looking up at the latest news. There's a curfew been put on. It's hard to know, actually. As you say, you need to look and watch all the channels. Well, that is what hubby does.
And also the other thing is, a point to note is, if either side are up to something sneaky beaky with their military, they're not going to go to their local media to ask
No, of
them
course
to
not.
announce
No,
it to the
no.
world. So there's going to be things happening on all sides that we're not going to be made privy
I
to
think, I
until
think
after
one
the
one
fact.
point one point I would like to make. However wrong it takes, and however casualties there may be, and damages and hardships, at some point, this will need this conflict, as every other conflict in the history of the warfare, will end up with negotiations around the table of certain selection of political leaders. So there is a fighting going on at the moment. We don't know which direction the fighting will go on. We are not even sure about the what ambitions of Russian authorities are in Ukraine. Do they do? They seem to want to take the control of Kiev. That might be achievable or not. Uh, Certainly less likely to be achieved than if they had only limited themselves to securing, the independence or secession of Donetsk and Lugansk. So, but at the end of it, at the end of every war, there will be time to negotiate and to make a peace treaty. That's how every war ends.
Smiley asks, why has NATO up to this point not brought the Ukraine under its wing?
Because the procedure to join the NATO is not easy one. I think I remember
Would that not have inflamed Putin more if
well, obviously, I mean, you need to have, first of all, you need to have a consensus within a certain country that it wants to join the NATO. Second thing is that NATO typically doesn't take into membership countries that have outgoing military problems or issues that are unresolved from whatever historical problem. This was problem with the North Macedonia, which applied for the NATO membership in, I think, 1992, and they are still not a member because Greece was objecting to their name. So they now changed the name from Macedonia to North Macedonia, and they are still not the members. It just takes every if there is any outstanding issue, it doesn't even need to be a military. It needs to if it is even a serious political issues, that would prevent a country from becoming a member state of NATO. And Ukraine has had many issues. The
So
central government was effectively not controlling the two of its provinces
right.
at the east, and then there is a huge percentage of the relatively huge percentage of the population of Ukraine, which is ethnic Russian population, that they simply don't want to be part of the NATO.
Right.
So
Okay.
So
But
There's
they're
been some
doing the next best thing by providing weapons and equipment like tanks and such,
and a lot of money, yes.
and money. Okay.
well, there's just some breaking news. I hate to use that word. Fighting has reached the Ukrainian capital, Kiev.
Yes, I
Mm.
think the first battles were fought in the district of Obrunovo about 24 hours ago. But that
So
was not
is
a
that
central
true?
district. This
Or
is if it's
so that's
if it,
just a rumor.
yeah. But now, yes. I think if there is going to be an advancement towards the central Kiev,
They
it,
expected it
yeah,
tonight, didn't they?
it's more likely to happen during the nighttime
Yeah.
than during the daytime, for the simple reason that the invading troops are more exposed to the sniper fire in the daytime. However, under the protection of the night, in the dark, the snipers from the buildings, which is the main, which is the principal way of defenders to defend a certain city from an invading force, is to use sniper rifles from various buildings and windows and balconies all over the town onto the all along the main streets. That's normally the way. Plus, put the physical blockade on the streets. That's how normally uh, people who are trying to defend major urban areas are defending. And so, for that reasons, the invading force would want to use night cover if they were to, um, if their objection is to take the control of the urban area and to come to its center.
Do you think Putin's trying to bring the USSR back together? There's people keep referencing an essay that he wrote, and it was harkening to the 17th century.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, there is. It's not just Putin, but I would also say the structures that support Putin. The I would say that there is a school of thought in Moscow that would like to see this reconquista, if we can call it that way, the return of some of the past glory of the Soviet Empire. Until 3 or 4 days ago, I used to believe that Putin was a chess player and a very reasonable man. But these latest moves, um, they don't seem to be uh, very reasonable. So yeah, anything can happen now. Most people, or those who did not believe the U.S. intelligence sort of reports, or Western intelligence reports, that invasion is imminent. I think most of those independent observers are hoping that the invasion would never happen, but in the end, it did happen. So uh, from that point onwards, I was among those who believed that there would be no invasion. So I'm a little bit disheartened now from making any new predictions as to what Putin may or may not do, because in all honesty, I did not expect this to happen. So I should probably refrain from making any further predictions to that effect,
Until, yeah,
and just see what
yeah.
what happens. Yeah.
Because I don't think anyone really expected it to go as far as this.
No.
They had that problem in
No, I mean
Georgia.
even the authorities in Bulgaria and Czech Republic and all these Eastern European countries. Um, I think only Poland was possibly the only country which was siding with the America and Britain, and suggesting that the invasion was imminent. But most of the other countries were simply not convinced of those reports. But then Putin made us look fools.
Oh, certainly,
Спасибо.
yeah.
Спасибо. Um,
So Smiley says thank you for answering her question. So yeah. Well done.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Well, it's up to Seb if he wants to stay on or not. He's done an hour and 10 minutes.
Okay, well that's me.
That's him. He's done.
That's
Yeah, he was up early this morning, wasn't he?
Yeah, when we were still up.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go and
That
but
was
thank
funny.
you very much for having me. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I hope you come back again.
Lovely. I will. I hope the war will be over soon, and then in which case I will possibly come back only once more. Hopefully that's what we should hope.
We should hope that it's over quickly.
And pray and hope that
Yeah.
people don't start killing each other, especially
Mm.
the two Slavonic nations who are both Eastern Orthodox Christians. They have so much in common, Ukrainians and Russians, and this makes the killing and even more of a tragedy. Because I mean, they do, historically, you couldn't really think of, you couldn't think of more two other nations that have so much in common as Ukrainians and Russians. So this is very tragic, and
Do you think we would be likely to see atrocities like we've seen in Syria, where people are used as human shields?
I've seen it firsthand, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone again. I wouldn't wish it, but can it happen in Ukraine? Yes, it can. I mean, anything can happen now. That's what I said a minute ago. Once there is a line between war and peace. And the moment you cross it, the Pandora box opens up. All the evils of the world are free to fly, and it's very difficult to put them back in the box. It takes destruction is much. Destruction is always far more easier and simple thing to do than to construct something. So we pray, we hope for the best, and
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Seb.
Bye bye.
Oh,
Good night.
he's not even waiting for you to kick him out. He's gone. Oh, poor Gulliver.
Is he okay?
Yeah, he was under my chair, but
Oh, bless him.
obviously because there's an extra chair in here today. He decided to make himself comfy under it, and I moved and knocked him awake, didn't I? Oh boy. So, yeah, quick exit. Couldn't get out of your seat fast enough, could he, Daphne?
Oh, yeah, of course, Daphne.
Daphne should have been here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if things.
For me, it's confusing when you watch all the news channels, because hubby was watching the Merlin. He was just gone from one to the other because he's got them all lined up now. And you're getting different reports from each one. So you don't know which one to believe.
Yeah. The tank that they showed on the news yesterday, day before yesterday, that they said was a Russian tank that had gone over a car, turned out to be an out of control Ukrainian tank, and they acknowledged that the following day. So it's possible that journalists, in their haste to get their story transmitted ready for printing, see something and misread it, and so you will see stuff being followed up the following day or 2 days later, slightly different, when there's been time to fact check. And
Well, that's all about that being first, isn't it?
yeah, and we now live in this digital age where news is instantaneous all around the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
and so there is a haste to transmit a story without doing the old school journalism that really should be applied when it's something as serious as this, because you know, Seb and I were talking yesterday evening, and we were talking about the fear mongering of it all and how it's quite damaging to people's mental health. We've just come 2.5 years down the road from a pandemic, and now we're all being slapped in the face with some new fear mongering. People should be more responsible. And I was really, because it was Granny who suggested we ask Seb if he wanted to come on and do this. And I'm glad that she did, because it sort of, I hope, gives everybody a bit of peace of mind. We're not heading into a nuclear winter. It doesn't look like, you know, we're going to be putting on the ground. Something really bad would have to happen for us to be in that situation.
But I just feel for these people who've now rushed to the train station, and it's literally sardines. You know, they're packed in at the train station. You've left your home. You know, and what really gets to me is the animals that are left behind.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
It is.
You know,
and that touches me more. And I know that's the wrong thing to say, but it does, because adults know better and the animals don't.
Yeah.
And they're just left behind. I mean, there was a picture, it was early hours this morning when I was watching, of a lady sitting there at the train station with her cat. She didn't have it on a lead, she didn't have it in a basket. And I just thought, you know, that, you know what cats are like, they just jump out of your arms, don't they, unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And it does get me about the animals,
Well,
the innocent animals.
It's heartbreaking for everyone in these circumstances where you have to flee with literal clothes on your back and leave everything else that you love and value behind. Hi, that's Molly, isn't it? Music with Memories and Meaning.
Yeah, they StreamYard refuses to show Molly up at the beginning.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. We need to get this sorted.
Well, it's the headlines, I think, are very frightening, and I think they are to a degree distraction. I did say to Seb last night, I said, well, at least we're not talking about Boris's parties anymore, because I was getting sick of the news just being about Boris's parties. Hopefully, there won't be horrific bloodshed in Ukraine, and hopefully the people are going to be given the freedom to pass through whatever zones they need to pass through in order to seek asylum in a NATO country. And we all have to, as NATO members, we all have to be prepared to take our fair share.
Yeah. I mean, there'll be nothing to go back to.
Wouldn't be in his interest to raise it to the ground, would it?
No.
In his interest to maintain the infrastructure. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying, has he lost his mind? Something triggered it.
Well, he didn't dream this up overnight, did he? It's been planned a long time ago.
As Seb said, the troops were gathering in June of last year when he was in Bulgaria, when he was on the Black Sea in Bulgaria. June of last year, he said there was Russian jets screaming, going supersonic, low and fast and hard. So they've
Mm.
been posturing for quite a while now.
He was very lucky, actually, that he arrived here when he did, because he wouldn't have been able to come back, would he?
Absolute fluke. So, yeah. And it's been nice to have him here because it's nice to have someone who has such a broad understanding of the politics of it all and the history of it all to dumb it down to my level for me.
Mm.
Because I was concerned. Like, are we provoking Putin? Are we going to end up going to war with Putin? I'm a child of a certain age, and I remember practicing ducking under my school desk for just in case that nuclear bomb goes off. We had to do the duck and cover practice in the classroom, which was a hangover from the Cuban Missile Crisis. So,
Do you think he would ever let the nuclear bomb off?
no, it's sheer folly. There's no winners in that one.
No.
Every other world leader with nuclear capability hits their red button too.
Mm.
Haven't you watched the film War Games?
Not me, no.
The pity that it was a great film.
I
That
think I did anyway.
I think it was made in the 80s, and it's about this young boy who hacked into the National Defense computer in the Pentagon, and he thinks he's
Oh,
playing
yeah,
a
I did watch
computer
it.
game.
Mm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's stuck. Yeah. I mean, there is no way to win, so no, I don't think he would do that. Who knows? But it was nice. It was nice to have
Mm.
Seb to agree to come in and talk to us. And so Molly says, what was the situation on the borders of Ukraine 12 to 18 months ago? Yes, it has. It's been building since Seb was on the south coast on the Black Sea in Bulgaria in summer year ago, a year and a bit ago, and he said that there was already a lot of activity that he felt was concerning, because the last time he'd seen such activity was around the time of the Bosnian War, which obviously he was working as a war correspondent during that. It is terrifying that, because they're saying in our press that Putin's not even taking his advisor's advice. He seems to be very focused on doing this against the wishes of many of his advisors.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Why don't they go after him? To take him down?
oh, I think that would cause issues. Are you talking about assassinating him?
Well, he's the one who's done this.
You've got to assume that there's someone already to just step up and replace him. And I think if he was assassinated, and from what I can gather, he's a very hard man to assassinate, because I do believe that a lot of people have tried to assassinate him over the years. from like the Russian mafia and such like.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of attempts on his life. He's a very hard man to assassinate. He's ex-KGB as well. He knows all the tricks in the book, doesn't he?
Of course he does.
Daphne says, "Do you remember the council sent out leaflets telling people to whitewash their windows and put sandbags by the doors during the cold?" I know, like a sandbag in some window was going to protect you from a nuclear blast.
I know.
I think it was to make you feel you'd done everything you could to protect yourself. But yeah,
They're going to get you. They're going to get you, aren't they?
They are indeed. And it is frightening, Jeanette. It's frightening that lives are at stake just for whims of one man. And, there'll be others close to him that do want him to do this. Yes, Daphne, the new B40 did indeed come out with the Earth dice screaming. Let's hope that we just don't see him go any further, and that we don't see the mass casualties.
What would it take, to get him to stop now?
Nothing short of Ukraine surrendering its sovereignty. That's what it's basically said. If you demilitarize, we can have a conversation. So surrender first, and then we'll have a chat. That's just not. It's not normal, that, is it?
No.
It means the time for discussing things has passed.
Molly says, what will he gain from getting Ukraine under control? Did I miss part of the convo?
He feels that there's two provinces on the east that most definitely should be given their own identity because they are Russian. It's occupied by Russian people. And the reason why he's done this is because, according to Putin, there has been a genocide in those two provinces going on for 8 years. And that's his reason for doing this. So yeah, when you couldn't get into the stream, that would have been when Seb was explaining that portion of how did we end up here.
Yeah. How long did the Bosnian War go on?
Was it 6 years?
It seemed longer than that, but you're right. The innocent children and the innocent people.
Yeah.
Just madness. Utter madness.
I can't see him backing down. Exactly. There was people who went to bed that night not expecting to be waking up to a situation where they were literally packing what they could and trying to get out the cities as fast as they could.
Absolutely no way would I leave my animals behind. None whatsoever.
What do you think, Oliver? Should we take Bella with us if we ever evacuate? I wouldn't have a choice. She'd be leading the stampede, wouldn't she? But
No,
the thing is
I
that
can
you
actually speak for hubby on this. He wouldn't leave them either.
no.
There's no way I could turn my back on them. No way.
No.
Well, we've done our 90 minutes.
There we go.
It was
Hopefully.
nice to hear it come from somebody who knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. He knows his stuff, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah. And I thought it was very nice of him to agree to come and talk to us about it and explain it to us. And if he's still around and people want to see him again and talk to him again, I'm sure we could.
Yeah.
We could lure him to the camera with some chocolate biscuits and a can of pop. I'm sure.
I haven't touched it yet. Chocolate. Things do fly by when you enjoy them, Jeanette.
So the NATO connection, Molly, is that he does not want Ukraine to be allowed to become a NATO member, and the reason for that is because he would then have on all of that side of Europe, Russia would be surrounded by NATO countries. So that was what the NATO connection was.
I think thank you all for turning up. Nice to see you all here. Nice to have Hinge and Bracket back again, isn't it?
It seems weird. Hinge and Bracket covered in news.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
I still use Hinge.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity to, you know, he was here, it's what he does for a living, and we were all talking about it in our private conversations and expressing worries and concerns. So
I'll get used to the accent as we
yeah.
we talk.
See, it's not too bad, is it?
It's not too bad, but you're more used to it than I was.
He talks really fast as well. Really fast.
I kind of got into what he'd said after he'd said it for about a minute.
Yeah. It's like your brain slowly catches up with what he's just said. It was good, and I thought, well, what a great opportunity if people have questions or concerns, or just want a better depth of understanding as to what the heck we're all watching. Good opportunity to ask him to do it. He did steal your seat, Daphne. He stole your seat.
You're going to have to top this one, Daphne.
Yeah. I hope your content's going to be as qualified as this was. Absolutely, there will be another time. It was just, Daphne was scheduled to come this weekend, and then obviously with what transpired in Europe, Seb's crashed here, and he's kind of.
Does he feel he'd like to be back there doing what he did, or he's glad to be out of it?
I think he's glad to not be covering this kind of story. I think, well, he did say, didn't he? He said he saw enough on the covering the Bosnian war. He doesn't.
Yeah, that's what he said earlier.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Right. We'll say good night until
Okay.
Hinge and Bracket return.
Until the return. Who knows when we'll pop up again?
Back in our box.
I'll get back in the box. I'll not come back out until we're
Okay.
ready. All right, take
Okay,
care.
everyone. Night night.
Nice to see you all. Take care. Bye.